Deep within the lush Central American jungle of the Yucatan Peninsula, dozens of empty ghost cities dot the vast landscape. These massive former metropolises bragged of impressive buildings, huge courtyards, wide streets, august temples, and elaborate neighborhoods, now all abandoned. Academics estimate these ancient places used to house populations in the millions. Today, not a single soul can be found anywhere. But why? What happened? There are no mass graves, hardly any skeletons with marks of physical violence, no signs of arson, invasions, plunder, wars, or any events of sudden destruction. So why? Why did millions of people leave their cherished birthplace and the convenience of civilization? And to where did they disappear? What happened to them? And how could a whole society simply disappear off the face of the earth? And Central America is not the only place we see this. Hundreds, if not thousands, of similar occurrences are found in Asia, Europe, plus North and South America. We see this with Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, Mesopotamia in Iraq, the Hittite Empire in Turkey, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Petra in Jordan, Caral in Peru, Easter Island, and Stonehenge in England. Closer to home, we have the ruins of Mesa Verde in Colorado, Casa Grande in Arizona, Okmulgee in Georgia, and Gila Cliffs in New Mexico, just to name a few. For decades, researchers were clueless as to why whole cities and regions of land were emptied of their inhabitants. But thanks to modern technology, we are now able to find the culprits of the disappearance of these ancient societies. Climate change and natural disasters. That's right, good old Mother Nature was behind all these bad deeds. Looking at both archaeological findings plus environmental surveys, researchers and scientists have been able to put different pieces of the puzzle together to find that forces of nature were responsible for these misfortunes.
Who've looked at sediment in the region estimate that in the year 760, the Yucatan Peninsula suffered its worst drought in 7,000 years. This was caused, it seems, by something the Maya would have appreciated all too well: the awesome power of the sun.
As if political turmoil and relentless enemies weren't enough, the Hittites also faced the capricious wrath of nature. Imagine a land shaken by earthquakes, its rivers running dry, its crops withering under a relentless sun. Anatolia, situated on a major fault line, is prone to earthquakes. During the Late Bronze Age, a series of powerful earthquakes rocked the Hittite heartland. These earthquakes caused widespread destruction, toppling buildings, shattering infrastructure, and claiming countless lives.
While the river Indus acted as a spine around which Mohenjo-Daro grew and prospered, it was also a source of great anguish. This is a recent visual of the flooding of the Indus, a much too regular phenomenon that continues to cause great damage.
Adding to their woes, the Hittites were also confronted with a prolonged drought. The rains failed, rivers dwindled to trickles, and crops withered in the fields. Famine stalked the land, weakening the population and making them more susceptible to disease.
People of Pompeii had no fear of the great volcano. But deep inside Vesuvius, molten rock had been leaking from the Earth's crust.
It was the middle of the night when the first tremors began. A shuddering and shaking in the earth, accompanied by a low rumble. Somewhere deep in the fault line of the Red Sea, the edges of the African and Arabian plates gave way against one another, and an earthquake shook the region.
Pompeii was about to meet its fate. The volcano finally erupted, sending molten rock 15 kilometers into the sky. The day turned black.
And as with the collapse of many civilizations we've looked at already, it seems that climate was to play a large part in the demise of Angkor. Recent research by Australian archaeologists suggests that the decline may have been caused, at least in part, by the global transition from the medieval warm period to the Little Ice Age.
After 30 years of drought, the spring dried up. The settlers were forced to move on to other areas to find water.
While earthquakes and droughts brought immediate devastation, a more insidious threat may have played a role in the Hittite Empire's demise: climate change. Imagine a gradual shift in weather patterns, a slow but relentless drying of the climate, leading to widespread crop failures and ecological upheaval. Evidence suggests that the late Bronze Age experienced a period of significant climate change. A prolonged drought, potentially caused by changes in ocean currents or volcanic eruptions, gripped the eastern Mediterranean region. This drought would have had a devastating impact on the Hittite agricultural system, leading to widespread crop failures, famine, and social unrest.
In 30 and 1375, a 25-year period of severe droughts occurred. And this happened again between 1400 and 1425. Between these extreme dry periods, the rains fell in a deluge. The period from the mid-14th to the mid-15th century contains an astonishing number of both the wettest and the driest years of the last millennium, and this would spell doom for the city of Angkor.
Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii in 25 meters of volcanic rock and ash.
Really devastating seems to have been the earthquake's effect on the city's water systems. Subterranean pipes were cracked and would have leaked their precious water into the sands, and some of its aqueducts split open. The enormous amount of maintenance required in the water system meant that Angkor essentially had a minimum possible population. Below the certain number of people required to maintain it, the system would have failed utterly. The city would have flooded permanently, and life there would have become unlivable. Petra's capacity to support life was directly linked to its capacity to store water. And with the complicated system now coming apart at the seams, its water and the city's remaining life would now leach away into the dust of the desert.
That's right, climate change has been bringing decades of drought followed by destructive floods, killer heat waves, forest fires, famine, misery, and death to life forms for thousands of years. That, plus natural disasters such as volcano eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis, have brought down many great civilizations throughout history. Now notice one very important glaring fact here. Climate change and natural disasters have been happening before there were any pollution-emitting cars, ships, factories, trains, trucks, boats, planes, and refrigerators. Let that sink in for a minute or two. Before people invented internal combustion engine cars, cycles of drought followed by intensive flooding occurred. Let me remind you that these deadly cycles brought down the mighty Hittite, Khmer, and Mohenjo-Daro empires. Way before we started burning fossil fuels by flying jet planes, annual tornadoes and hurricanes have been slamming into the South and Midwest with devastating consequences. And thousands of years before the first industrial factory opened in England, there were deadly heat waves that choked the life out of whole ancient societies. These lethal heat waves, along with decades-long drought, dried up rivers and lakes, which caused many Native American societies in Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico to abandon their settlements for greener pastures. And do I need to talk about the Ice Age, its demise, plus at least 3 mini Ice Age periods, and their demises that Earth experienced the past 6,000 years? All these climate change incidents occurred before we started polluting the planet with carbon-emitting machines, as politicians and certain so-called scientists love to accuse us with.
Job number one is to stop using the sky as an open sewer for all of this man-made global warming pollution. And that's what's making the weather crazy and dangerous, leading to all of the consequences that are on the TV news almost every night now.
This evidence represents a very strong case, in my opinion, that the greenhouse effect has been detected and it is changing our climate now.
The debate over climate change remains a hot-button topic, and now some of Hollywood's biggest names are taking action. Matt Damon, Harrison Ford, and Arnold Schwarzenegger are part of the team behind a 9-part documentary series, Years of Living Dangerously.
This is what's happening in Hollywood. Another climate change protest. They're meant to grab attention on Oscar weekend and get people thinking about a very serious issue. Greg Mills is live in Hollywood to show us more.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
There you have it, folks. They've been feeding us lies, manipulating our fears while laughing all the way to the bank. This so-called climate crisis, is it a genuine threat or the biggest scam of our generation? While we're told to sacrifice our livelihoods to save the planet, elites continue their lavish lifestyles, untouched and unconcerned about any harmful environmental impact they leave behind. Isn't it convenient that those who shout the loudest about impending doom are the same ones who produce the biggest carbon footprints? It's time to pull back the curtain and expose the truth. Are we being duped by a fabricated narrative designed to control and exploit us? Let's get into the facts and uncover the reality behind the climate change agenda. For decades, we've been inundated with alarming headlines predicting environmental catastrophes, from global cooling in the 1970s to global warming in the 1990s, and now the all-encompassing climate change. Their story keeps on changing, but the underlying message remains. Humanity is to be blamed and drastic measures are needed. But how much of this is rooted in science and how much of it is driven by political and financial interests? As I've already shown, the climate has always been changing the past 6,000 years. The Mayas, Khmers, Native Americans, ancient Middle Easterners, among many others, all had to leave their cherished cities and homelands because the changing weather conditions made it impossible for them to sustain life. You can't blame airplanes, factories, refrigerators, or cars for this because they simply were not around to affect the environment. So no, both history and science disprove that mankind have much of an impact on nature. If the sun increases or decreases in heat intensity, this will bring more global warming or global cooling to our planet regardless of how many cars, planes, or factories we use. The same for earthquakes and volcano eruptions, which mankind has absolutely no control over. This is especially true of the latter because many scientists point to the enormous amount of ash that covered the whole atmosphere after each biblical eruptions, blocking sunlight from reaching below. These ash covers created ice ages. Again, humans have no impact on these events whatsoever. Up to now, we have seen that both history and science disprove the false narrative that man is behind climate change. Next, we will look at politics and economics. Sensationalism sells, and fear is a powerful motivator. By perpetuating tall tales of imminent disasters, media outlets capture attention and drive engagement. Objectivity, balanced reporting, and critical analysis all give way to high ratings, high sale volumes, and of course, high profits for these news corporations.
All right, more than 500,000 lives have been claimed by extreme global weather events that were intensified by man-made climate change.
Now, NASA says global sea levels rose by more than expected last year. The agency blamed an unusual amount of ocean warming combined with water from melting glaciers.
In many ways, Greenland is on the front line of climate change. Today, its ice cap is the single biggest contributor to global sea level rises.
And more recently, heat waves in Europe over the last 2 summers killed more than 90,000 people combined.
2024 was the hottest year on record. It featured the hottest summer on record, which included the hottest day on record. So when we really take a step back and look at the lay of the land here, it's not a pretty picture.
Say the evidence is clear that the reef is in danger and governments have to act now against climate change. Victoria Gill reports.
But selling more newspapers, magazines, and getting more TV views are just the tip of this climate change hoax. Financial incentives can't simply be ignored. The green energy sector has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, with companies and investors standing to gain immensely from policies promoting renewable energy and carbon credits. This definitely raises questions about the objectivity of those advocating for such measures. It's essential to approach the climate change narrative with a critical mind. While environmental stewardship is crucial, We must be vigilant against agendas that exploit genuine concerns for profit and control. By examining the motivations behind the messaging and following the money, we can better understand the true drivers of the climate change agenda. While I am totally for free market capitalism, we should not let economics and profits alone be the determinants on how we live our lives. Let me give you some concrete examples. Let's look at the average time it takes to charge an electric vehicle. Depending on the power source, battery size, and the EV's charger capacity, it can range from about half an hour all the way up to a full day. Did you hear that? Even at the best case scenario of only half an hour, imagine having to wait half an hour for your car to have enough juice to go. What a waste of time. Now compare that with filling gas with your traditional ICE car that takes a mere 5 minutes. No contest. Also, factor in having to find places that have chargers and working your long road trip around this big inconvenience. And when you do get there, you might have to wait for a charger to be available since most places only have 4 or 5 chargers at each site. On the other hand, there are millions of gas pumps located in thousands of locations, which require much shorter wait time. Ironically, EVs can be quite harmful to the environment, something which they were supposedly made to protect.
In terms of EVs themselves, as many smart people already know, during manufacture they generate a huge amount of environmental damage, mining for cobalt, nickel and lithium.
Unlike traditional car batteries, EV batteries are complex and contain hazardous materials like cobalt, nickel and lithium, which can be difficult to recycle. If not properly handled, these materials can leach into soil and water, causing long-term environmental contamination.
And last, if you watch my video about Chinese EVs in which I warned you from buying, you would know that many EVs are quite hazardous to operate. I highly recommend you watch this eye-opening video. I will give the link below. Although most of these dangerous EVs are Chinese-made, some are also from well-established players such as BMW and Tesla.
Electric vehicles are exploding worldwide, and it's becoming a bit concerning as I start to analyze multiple incidents involving these explosions.
It took over 6,000 gallons of water to extinguish the flames emitted from this Tesla Model S.
EVs can be especially dangerous when they catch fire.
Imagine the battery in your EV, the very core of your green machine, becoming a ticking time bomb. This happens when the battery cells start overheating, often due to damage.
2 vehicles on fire in the garage. One is an EV. We're starting hazmat.
Primary is complete on the first floor. No extension, light smoke.
Toxic gas emissions. When an electric vehicle battery catches fire or explodes, it releases hazardous gases like hydrogen fluoride, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds. These gases are not only harmful, but potentially lethal.
Solar panels and windmills sound great on paper, but will perform poorly on rainy and windless days. Windmills are also notorious for killing birds that fly near them. Not very environmentally friendly, are they? So my point is, promoting green businesses to combat climate change is not only a fool's errand, it also brings lots of inconvenience to our daily life, harms the environment, and most importantly, puts us all in danger. But the biggest pusher of this hoax is, you guess it, big government. Big government, aka socialism, wants to control every aspect of our life from cradle to grave. The socialist elites love to dictate to us small people what to eat, what to wear, where to live, and most frightening, when we can live. Enjoying the American dream in our nice big homes, eating delicious steak dinners, saving food in refrigerators, keeping warm with our HVAC units, and driving our private cars are all no-nos to the socialists. Instead, we have to live in cramped, high-rise apartment buildings, avoid ozone-destroying refrigerators, eat only fruits and vegetables, plus stop using heaters and private cars to save the environment. That's how we little people have to live if our socialist masters have it their way. Could you imagine how many millions around the world will die if we can't use refrigerators to preserve food? And how many Americans need to die of the extreme cold or heat if big government won't allow us to use our HVAC? How do you feel about this? And how do you feel if you can't drive your car to wherever and whenever you want in order to protect the environment? Now let's look at how these green socialists along with their Hollywood friends live, and you will be totally surprised. Intuitively, you will think these environmental social warriors will be living in small, energy-efficient homes, consuming vegetables from the garden, flying economic class, and utilizing public transportation to align with their green values. But no, nothing could be further than the truth. Instead, they each have several large multi-million-dollar mansions, feast on $300 meals, fly in private jets, drive big fancy cars, and consume way more precious resources than the average American. In other words, our socialist masters and their Hollywood buddies want us to starve and freeze to death while they enjoy their wasteful and environmentally damaging lifestyles. So typical of socialist elites. The Clintons' $1.7 million mansion in Chappaqua, New York. Another $1.2 million mansion nearby. And a 5,500 square feet DC mansion costing $2.85 million, complete with swimming pools, sure do wonders for our fragile planet. Joe Biden has 3 gigantic mansions in Delaware that include a 6,850 square feet place costing around $2 million, a 10,000 square feet mansion costing $1.2 million, plus a 3-story beach home costing $2.7 million. Not to be outdone, the Obamas also have their exclusive list of giant luxury homes that includes a $1.65 million mansion with 6,400 square feet of living space, an 8,200 square feet mansion with 9 bedrooms and 2 kitchens costing a whopping $8.1 million, a 6,900 square feet mansion costing $11.7 million on Martha's Vineyard Island, and 3 retirement homes in Hawaii for $8.7 million. And how can we ever forget the poster child of all this climate doom and gloom lie? Defeated presidential candidate Al Gore himself. Al Gore has a 10,000 square feet estate in Nashville where he uses 21 times the amount of energy than the typical American household. He also has a mansion in Virginia, and what do you know? A giant beach home in California costing $8.9 million. The latter has 6 fireplaces where the Gores can contribute to global warming by burning firewood. This estate also comes with an outdoor swimming pool complete with a heating system.
Over the last 12 months, Gore used more electricity just heating his outdoor swimming pool than 6 typical homes use in a year.
Now for people who have been screaming their heads off about rising sea levels, these socialist elites sure aren't worried about it since they have invested millions into luxury islands or beach homes. Pure hypocrites at their finest. And when he's not burning a ton of energy in his exclusive estates, he flies around in private jets. These jets burn 4 times the amount of fuel per passenger than commercial jets. In other words, Al Gore does 4 times the environmental damage whenever he has a joyride on a Gulfstream 400. Good job, Al! If increasing carbon emission is a crime, then Al Gore and his fellow Democrats will be on the FBI's most wanted list, with Al being America's #1 enemy. On the Hollywood side, the poster child will be Leonardo DiCaprio, who also has numerous huge mansions and a fleet of cars. Surprise, surprise! These include 2 Los Angeles mansions worth $7.1 million and $10 million, a 7,000 square feet Palm Spring mansion worth over $5.3 million, a $95,000 Range Rover SUV plus at least half a dozen other expensive cars, and his private 480 feet yacht. I wonder how much energy this one loudmouth actor uses in a single year and the resulting huge amount of pollution he causes. And to top it all off, he even has his own private island. That's right, he bought a 104-acre island, which he intends to build a resort and several villas on. What a great way to protect our endangered planet by constructing housings on a once pristine island. I wonder how many trees will have to die and how many animal habitats have to be destroyed for Leo's private island. And where will all that wastewater and trash go? Similar to his eco-hypocritical friends in the Democrat Party, Leo loves living near the ocean. On December 2016, he paid $23 million to buy a beachfront property in Malibu to build a beach mansion. 5 years later, he purchased a $13.8 million retreat in the same town. This shows that he is not a bit concerned about the rising sea levels that climate change will bring about. Now, why is that? Is it because he knows everything he has been screaming about all these years is not true? Why invest tens of millions of your money in properties if they will all be lost underwater? Last but not least, Leonardo also loves to use or throw parties on private jets and yachts, which consume many times more fossil fuels and pollute the environment than their commercial counterparts, as I have recently pointed out. There you have it, folks. The champions for Mother Earth who lecture us on how we should be living are the same folks who abuse her the most. And these are not a few Democrat politicians or Hollywood movie stars, but every single environmental big mouths consume 20 times more energy and pollute 20 times our planet more than the average person. Socialism at its best. From a green angle, we can clearly see another example of socialist hypocrisy. They live extremely wasteful lifestyles that the average person can only dream about, while dictating to us to stop using our gas cars, refrigerators, heaters, and ACs plus living in homes. And they want to put this into law to punish those who dare to disobey their hypocritical laws. So what's the solution? But before I talk about my attack plan, I would like to ask for your help by hitting the like and subscribe button. So here's my strategy to fight against the eco-fascists. First, show everyone the facts I gave in this video about the climate always changing the past thousands of years before we drove cars, flew on planes, and used appliances. Inform everyone that man has very little influence over the climate and natural events. Second, point out that relying solely on green technology is not only unfeasible and inconvenient, but very dangerous for us and harmful for the environment. Think cloudy days for solar panels and deadly exploding Chinese EVs. Third, expose the climate change loudmouths and their fake double standards. Give the examples of Al Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, and others that I mentioned and show all the earth-killing toys they love to enjoy. Fourth, fight against all attempts by big government to control our lives. Show up at City Hall meetings, arrange visits to our local elected officials, put pressure on the president, vote for people who can see through the green lies, and demand that they make decisions based on unbiased science, not on fear-mongering or propaganda. And last, organize into community action groups to brainstorm strategies and voice concerns about losing our freedoms and lives because of the fake climate change agenda. To learn how you too can organize a local community action meeting, watch my video about the most recent one we had and the constructive discussion that followed. You can find the link below. We need to organize and brainstorm a strategy to get results. A big win for us was when President Trump bravely stood up against the global climate hysteria. The withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement represents a huge victory for US sovereignty and common sense. This bold move protects our nation from crippling regulations and astronomical costs imposed by unelected global elites. I have dissected the so-called climate change crisis and exposed the manipulations and falsehoods perpetuated by those who stand to gain from it. Witnessing how these deceptions have infiltrated our policies, economies, and daily lives is infuriating. Now, it's time to channel that anger into action. Don't accept information at face value. Scrutinize the data, question the sources, and demand transparency. When confronted with alarming climate claims, ask for the evidence. Also, ask who benefits from these narratives. Expose the vested interests and hidden agendas of more government control over our daily lives. Arm yourself with knowledge and share it relentlessly. Engage in discussions, present factual information, and dismantle the myths surrounding climate change. Organize into community action groups to spread awareness about the exaggerations and lies we've been fed. The more people we reach, the stronger our collective voice becomes. We do have a responsibility to keep our environment clean and safe for the next generation, but more government control via carbon taxes, restrictive energy regulations, and unnecessary environmental mandates often do more harm than good. More government control will mean less freedom, more poverty, more famine, and more misery for 99.999% of humanity except for the global and Hollywood elites. Remember that these elites live in giant mansions, use tons of energy to heat their swimming pools, fly private jets, party on private yachts, and have fleets of cars while demanding that we live in small apartments, give up our cars, freeze during the winter, and endure miserable lives. This is not fair and must be resisted by all of us. More Big Brother control over our lives under the clever covers of social justice, anti-racism, class equality, or climate control will only lead to slavery, massive unrest, and deaths for millions of people. We must all stand up and fight for our God-given freedom, lives, and happiness as free citizens. Thanks for watching, and may God bless us in our noble cause. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Also, please share this important video with other patriots to get out our message.